All right, thank you. We're going to begin, before we begin the formal meeting, we're going to have a short interview for boards and commissions. We have Kirsten Zolfo.
That's correct.
And I want to thank you very much for applying to be part of the Disability Advisory Committee. And I also want to welcome you to Lower Makefield Township. I understand you moved from Newtown?
Yes, that's correct.
And their loss is our gain. And
Thank you.
Particularly pleased that you've come to apply for this position, given your experience on the planning board in Newtown Township.
Yes.
So my quick question is, what motivated you to apply for the position?
Sure. So since maybe 2010, I've done some form of civic involvement, whether it was on my homeowners association board, which I did from 2010 to 2014, and then work on the planning commission, and I was missing it. We actually moved to Lower Makefield a year ago, but we were in apartments over in Polo Run, and we just purchased a condo and moved in over I guess it was September. So I was feeling like that piece of my daily life was missing.
Excellent. And then I take it on the planning commission you have experience reviewing all the plans and understanding for building. The role in the Disability Advisory Board is crucial in terms of understanding accessibility with potential new buildings and stuff. Is that something you feel very comfortable with?
Definitely. It's something I deal with on a regular basis. I'm right now actually working with my homeowners association to get a handicap space and the curb cut and that sort of stuff. So I'm familiar with some of the steps that have to be dealt with.
Excellent, thanks. At this time, I'll have other board members. Supervisor McCartney, do you have any questions?
I didn't have any questions, but thank you so much for applying.
Sure, thank you.
Supervisor Grenier?
I actually don't have any questions.
Okay,
I
Supervisor
appreciate you
Blundy?
coming.
No, I have no questions, just thank you and welcome.
Sure, thank you.
Supervisor Ross?
No questions. I think you covered all the...
I promised 5 minutes. I wasn't kidding.
You
Thank
did.
you so much.
Thank you.
If you're watching at home, when you get home, there'll be a section at the end where nominations are taken and the vote will occur.
Fabulous.
Thank you again for applying, and we appreciate you and your service.
Thank you. I'm sorry I can't stay for the whole meeting, but I
worries.
appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thanks. With that, I'm going to call to order the official December 7th Board of Supervisors meeting. We're going to begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll begin with a roll call. Supervisor McCartney.
Present.
Supervisor Grenier.
Here.
Supervisor Ross.
Here.
Supervisor Blundy.
Here.
And let the record reflect that all members are present and accounted for. We're going to begin with the community announcements, number 4. If you have some free time on the weekends and would like to volunteer your time, you can join the Friends of 5 Mile Wood Cleanup Days. They're held the second Saturday of the month at 5 Mile Wood starting at 8:30 a.m. Please come in comfortable clothes that you don't mind getting a little bit dirty. Bring along your work gloves and water to stay hydrated. Projects for the day will include litter cleanup, trail lining, pruning, as well as boardwalk repairs. If you've got questions, contact Monica Tierney. That's Monica T at lmt.org. The Yardley's Farmers Market will be at the Community Center. Yep, that's right, 1550 Oxford Valley Road, Yardley, PA, from 10 a.m. to 12 on Saturday, December 7th, and Saturday, December 21st. Exciting news. You can make it your Saturday very special by joining folks at the Yardley Farmers Market in the midday, and then obviously the Yardley Christmas Parade in Yardley Borough. You don't want to miss that. LMT and Yardley Borough will be also hosting an e-waste recycling event on Saturday, December 14th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the pool at LMT 1050 Edgewood Road. Additional information and link to register can be found on the Township website calendar at lmt.org. And item E, Lower Makefield Township will be hosting another blood drive for the Red Cross on Friday, December 20th from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. in the meeting room of the Township Building, 1100 Edgewood Road. That's this room. To sign up or get information, log on to redcrossblood.org and enter sponsor code Lower Makefield. One thing I'd like to mention to folks, if you haven't donated blood, I'd urge you to strongly consider it. Obviously, we go through recurring shortages, but to think about a way in which you can give of yourself with almost very little issue or pain and help somebody else anonymously. And if you think about giving in this season, what better way to give than somebody you don't know and somebody who could benefit? There are a lot of folks that benefit from the blood we donate, and we want to make sure that they keep living. So make sure that you can come on the 20th. If you can't come on the 20th, there are other blood drives you can sign up online as well. It works very well. Get an email sign up. You can answer all your questions before you get into all the fancy questions they ask you about sharing needles or traveling to foreign countries. You can get those all out of the way before you enter the room, and speeds through the process, and the cookies are solid. You don't want to miss it. Last announcement, the Environmental Advisory Council is holding their first styrofoam collection event for 2025 on Saturday, January 11th from 10 a.m. to noon at the Township Building, 1100 Edgewood Road, Yardley, Pennsylvania. Along with your clean white styrofoam, you can bring natural corks, cleaned pill bottles with tops, and batteries. Oh my gosh, you've got batteries, you want to get those out. If you've got questions, you can check out the calendar on our website at lmt.org or reach out to the Township Building at admin.lmt.org. One thing is no styrofoam peanuts. I know this time of year we get a truckload of those with all the messages and stuff. You don't want to put those in. You want to find another way to get rid of those. We'll move on to agenda item 5. This is public comment on non-agenda items. So if you have a comment on something that's not on the agenda, you're welcome to join us here at the dais. Please give us your name and whether or not you're a resident of Lower Makefield Township.
Zachary Rubin, 1661 Covington Road. I rise to comment on the railroad crossing quiet zones. I have a question to the chief through the chair, if I may. Since we have the quiet zones, have there been any fatalities at those crossings?
No, there have not.
Have there any serious accidents at those crossings?
No.
Okay, so it's certainly a successful program. And I submit it's one of the most successful initiatives that this township ever took for quality of life issues, because very few counties, townships, and other municipalities in the state have that. And our 3 railroad crossings certainly bring a lot of comfort, especially at night. In 1992, I moved into Makefield Glen, which is right next to the Heacock Crossing. I said to the sales office, "What about that railroad crossing right there?" They said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's the old Reading line, and they're bankrupt, and they're really out of business, so there's hardly any trains." So I could come up Sunday to see my house being built and for pre-construction, and it's on Sundays, and there's very few SEPTA trains running on Sundays. So the first night I moved in, on a weeknight, at 4 a.m., next thing I know, a 120-car freight train comes zooming down, and of course, not only do I hear the 4 whistles at my stop, I hear the other 2 stops, because a quarter of a mile they start the process. And it certainly was disconcerting. The CX line is the main line that crosses our township, and they bring all the oil tankers from the oil fields from North Dakota, west to east of New York, and they come directly north to south to the Delaware River, to the Delaware Bay, or to the Chesapeake Bay, and they go out. So we're right there in the major crossing, and with the quiet zones, it certainly creates a better place to live. So I commend this township. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hasib Abdur Rahman. I'm a representative to Zubaydah Foundation right across the street from Charles Bain Middle School in Lower Makefield. I want to compliment Mr. Lewis has been expeditious in starting this meeting and getting it underway ASAP. So I'm going to be ASAP, what I have to say. I just want to give out a nice warm shout out once again to the Lower Makefield Police Department. I can never say enough accolades to this wonderful department here for the last number of years and counting. I want to give a special shout out to Kenneth Caluzzi, Chief of Police. Also the Deputy Chief of Police, Robert W. Lewis, And also, I want to give a shout out to Police Chief Kaluzzi's tremendous staff. I mean, the staff that works in the office has been courteous, very accommodating to myself and others from Zubaydah Foundation who has come in and had a chat with the police chief. So during this holiday season, I wish it was every day, but nonetheless, this is the Christmas season. We're getting ready to approach Happy New Year, and I want to thank each and every one of you, and let me not forget the police chief's rank and file, the loyal police officers who represent the Lower Makefield Township Police. This is a wonderful township. We are honored as a religious institution to be a part of the Lower Makefield Township and for many years to come. Thank you so much for your time, and I'd like to leave my cards to pass along. Merry Christmas.
Merry
and
Christmas.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any additional public comment. Is there anyone on the line? I don't think we have any callers. No callers? Okay, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda items. And these are items that are considered en masse. If there's a board member or a member of the public who seeks to have one of these agenda items discussed separately, now's the time which they can speak up. If they have any concerns and would like to remove any items from the consent agenda, I'm not seeing any supervisors indicating so. I'm looking both ways. I'm also seeing any members of the public suggesting that as well. With that, I'd certainly entertain a motion on the consent agenda item.
So moved.
Second.
With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the consent agenda items as listed in the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect that the motion passed 5-0 unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 7, engineers report, 7A. Isaac, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow board members. A few items for tonight's meeting, the first of which is related to the Woodside Road Multi-Use Trail Project. In the past few meetings, excuse me, we have discussed the items that have been identified as additional work with the fence to go into certain stretches along the trail, as well as redoing the trail to straighten it out where it had previously gone around the poles, a few other associated items. These items, the contractor that had done the original contract of the work has provided the proposal, and we looked at that. They also have identified that with the time of year and the weather, the asphalt paving for the trail portions wouldn't be done until the weather warmed up again. In addition to that, the township has submitted a grant application for the DCED Greenways grant. Since we took a look at the contractor's proposal, the DCED grant agency folks did clarify that it would need to be a separately bid project for this work to be eligible for that grant funding. And they do plan to meet in the early part of 2025, most likely March, to announce grant awards for that and for those applications. So with that and working with staff, we are recommending that the best path forward would be to have the additional work as its own bid project. We're calling it phase 2 of the work to be completed. That would allow us to bid this project or the additional work of the project. In the meantime, while we're waiting through the winter months, we can investigate better pricing, whether the original contract is one of the bidders or not, as well as remain eligible for that DCD funding that hopefully will be announced in the early part of 2025. So with that, be happy to answer any questions. The requested action by the board this evening would be to authorize bidding of that phase 2 work. And that's something we could have prepared to go out for public bid to receive funding. Reminder, when that funding comes in, or I should say the bids come in, it would come back before the board to make a decision whether they want to move forward with that or take a different path forward to get the work done. So with that, ask the board for the majority of the board to authorize that bidding process.
Is there supervisor comment or motion?
I don't know if anyone has a motion, I don't, but.
Nope, you
No.
want to go? Okay.
Sure. And I make sure I'm close to the mic, I swear. I think we, as a board, I think we understand the need to move forward soon, and we understand the process, so we appreciate how you spelled out the process and relative to the grant and when we should bid and when we could do this and how, just to make sure we get all the funding. In conversations with staff specific to the plans that would go out to bid, and if I misspeak, please, anyone on the board, feel free to chime in. The board would like you to work with staff in terms of the location of the fence and some of the other details on the plan, to include, basically work with them to make sure that the plans include specific, in CAD, not just PDF markups, the locations of the, specific locations of the fence, dimensions in plan view, dimensions of the fence shown on the plans, for, as you know, so like if a contractor goes out, they can use that information to stake out the location of the fence.
Yeah, it would be a full bid package that would be moved forward for bidding. Excuse me, the plans included with the packet this evening were the ones that were requested just to show the limits, the last couple of meetings of where those items are.
Yeah,
But for bidding, it would be specified with
so the,
specifications, scope of work, plans with limits for a bidder to see exactly what those quantities are that they're bidding on.
yeah. Would your plans, to your point, I guess when we look at the plans that were submitted with the package, and I know we don't need them on the screen or anything, but that's not a plan set that we would like to put out to bid, to serve as the plans that would go out to bid. That's what we're.
It would be more of an engineered plan view.
Right.
Yeah, this is more of a, I would say, simplified version to show with some call-outs exactly where those items are that correspond with the quantities.
Okay. So I think what the board would like to do, and again, not speaking for the whole, if I misspeak, I think the board would like to see those plans before we initiate bidding, just to make sure that everyone's on board with the approach, and nothing that would take an immense amount of time, because we recognize the time frame here. We've just, from a board comfort level, staff comfort level, I think if we can take these plans to the next stage to be ready for bidding, so we can see that before it goes out to bid, we authorize it to go out
I
to
will
bid.
clarify the quantities are specifically identified with the packet. The only difference is, I guess, the look on the plan of the limits of the items. So instead of a red line, it would be black and white with the limits called out. I just want to clarify that the difference will be minimal on the plan, I would say. The quantities and the station ranges are included for each of the items that are in the estimate that would be bid out for the items already discussed and proposed with cost from the previous contractor. So the scope is exactly the same, the limits are exactly the same. The plans themselves, rather than having those limits drawn on them for the purpose of clarity for this meeting, they would be drawn in CAD, the
Right.
CAD software.
And do we have a spec on the fence yet? Because right now, all we have is a photo, so we don't know.
It would be that type of fence as a detail.
So, and do we have fence details with respect to foundation types and sizes and locations and elevation views of the fence, just material type, all that stuff that would go in there?
It is the horizontal board fence, base of design, or approved equal for the bid.
Right.
So they would have a detail on the plan sheet that would look as a plan detail that corresponds to the photo that we wanted to show, just to show everyone how it looks when it's actually in the ground. And the horizontal board fence, it's nothing out of the ordinary standard version of that fence type. It would be manufactural base of design,
Right.
or an approved equal provided by a bidder.
Okay. So I think, unless the board disagrees, I think the board would like to see, we'd like to see those plans completed before we authorize bidding. That's all.
Yeah, I would, in discussions with board members separately, there has been suggestion that, in general, the principle of bidding this out is a good one, and the timing and the suggestion you made is fine. Our concern is really just wanting to dot every I and cross every T before the bid goes out, and so that we have all that. So I don't think, and my thought is if we could get this back, it would be on the 18th meeting. It would probably be possibly even consent agenda-able. So we just want to make sure that we get all that stuff. And we also, in discussions with staff, we think additional detail would be helpful before, for board members to make them feel comfortable on that. With that, do you want to move on to agenda item 7B?
Absolutely. So item B is an update item. Excuse me. The Highland Drive Drainage Improvement Project, as we've been talking about really the last few months throughout this year. The original estimate and proposal of that was provided in May of this past year in 2024. Obviously, there's been a series of different direction and items that have been done throughout the design phase arc of this project, including work with the homeowner on easements and staking those out, work on the culvert itself and the associated items, reworking the culvert for what's the preferred option going forward. So we provide the memo that's included with the packet to really outline the original scope of work that was anticipated back in May, and then identify the work that's been done really to prepare all the deliverables that are associated with the project. So with that, it brings us to where we are here at the end of 2024, looking at 2025, meeting with Contech to have them finish the culvert design and then prepare the bid package for bidding. That's anticipated most likely by the end of January. Contech stated with our meeting yesterday with them that they would have their culvert provided in probably the second week of January, roughly. And what it does identify is that the originally estimated design phase cost back in May, with the different items that have been kind of added to the project along the way, is fairly close overall, but it doesn't include us getting all the way up to the construction management, construction inspection phase. So it has at the end of the memo there listed that the original proposal cost and then the anticipated design phase cost that would have the project bid out and would then have it come before the board for a recommended award for construction. If you've read through the memo, it kind of goes through all the items. I'd be happy to answer any questions on that, but we wanted to provide an update on that project now that we're getting close to the final portion of the design phase before it goes to construction. Any questions on the design phase?
Actually, just one quick one. Well, I mean, I can let you go if there's another supervisor, but I was going to ask.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, this project has a not to exceed amount in the structure of it then, and we're going to be okay with the scope of work and the not to exceed amount?
Not exactly. The original proposal is attached. That was an estimated not to exceed amount. As you can see from the memo, the original scope of work has been majorly completed. The additional design phase work required time and effort to be shifted from the construction management, construction inspection, last phase of it, to finish the design work. So that's where we are at this point. Then not to exceed from May has changed with the scope of work for design, and that's what this update is for. The information for the board is to show that with the design phase altogether included additional tasks. The total design effort looks to be completed in January, and then when the project would go to construction, and this is something we've talked about with staff for construction projects in general, we would present also the industry standard of kind of a percentage of the contract value that would be inspection, part-time inspection, construction management type of work.
Yeah, and this is, question along the lines. For all of the changes that occurred in the project, did we get signature to approve changes in scope on those?
We were going off of approved direction at board meetings for those. So it was easement, I mean, they're all listed here. I don't want to read through them unless you want me to. But it's the direction for additional work that wasn't in the original proposal. So at the time, it wasn't a specific
Yeah.
dollar amount for each item, but with the direction from the board, we were conducting meetings and tasks for the design to get the deliverables
And we
ready.
understand, so, again, I work in a very different a different industry circumstance, but presumably we had a sign, or staff sign off on those, or somewhere along the lines? I'm just checking the process on this. That's where I want to make sure that we're in good shape on that.
Sure, yeah, the original proposal from May is similar to proposals we prepare for all capital work with the township. It states, the work would not be adjusted without prior approval of the township. So those, we have noted as the direction that was, for the additional work. We also have, to reallocate project effort and hours to provide the required deliverables, which we've been doing per the direction of the board. And that's what brings us to where we are at the end of this year. So with the additional tasks that have been completed and the few that remain to finish up that design phase, the total from May doesn't go past the bidding phase.
Right, so I'm curious, and this is helpful for us, and there was an initial agreement that had a scope and a not-to-exceed amount. Then and we understand in projects, circumstances change. I want to make sure we've just nailed all this down. In those cases, from the original work and the original not-to-exceed amount, where are we on that amount?
The original proposal I have attached in the packet that you guys read. That original scope had a total of $177,975. And that was for that scope that was described in May of 2024. Where the project is now, it has shown that to get it to the end of the bidding phase and out to bid, that would be $179,000 total. And as I mentioned, when it goes to the process where bids are received for the project, for construction, we would, propose that whether it's us or anybody would do the construction management inspection of the work when it's in construction with a bidder to make sure it's done per the approved plans.
So, I guess another way to ask it, so the updated memo to me reads more like a change order request versus, you're itemizing things and saying what was out of scope that you did versus just an update. Because we will have to approve this in order to spend it, right? In order to authorize moving forward with the scope.
Well, the
So that's what I'm trying to
CNCI,
understand.
I didn't have anything included as a change of scope proposal with that. The tasks of the original scope have been completed besides the bidding and construction. The additional work has been done with those phases of the project. The cost of what it would be to inspect the job, not knowing what the contract value is when it's awarded, I didn't want to have that for an approval because I don't know what that number is, to be honest. So that would be proposed at the time of the bid award would be to have construction inspection for the job as well.
So for that one, though, when we approved it back in May, Phase 5 of the proposal that with the scope of work that we approved in May was construction management inspection and had a $22,000 value.
That's been shifted into the other phases because of the additional work
Okay, so
directed by the board.
I'm not sure that we've done that. And I'm going to talk to our manager, not you,
That's fine,
please.
but I did
okay?
list the items for your reference
I
that are
understand.
additional
However,
in the packet provided.
Dave, do you have anything where you have written any estimates or anything else that you have approved as the township manager to move forward with additional services outside and above the scope of work we approved in May?
I do not know.
Okay. Were you ever provided any cost estimates for any of this work for us to approve?
I was not, no.
Okay. So that's an issue from a process perspective for us to be able to manage project budgets. I understand things change, obviously, and it looks to me right now that, the phases 1 through 4-ish, and maybe some of phase 6, the reimbursables, which is more of an expense versus a phase, I guess, from a task perspective.
Those were the soil borings and things of that nature that were done in the design phase were under reimbursables as well.
Yeah, well, I get
Shows
that,
it's
I get
completed,
that.
yeah. We can stop before bidding, and I can propose, if you want, a cost of the bidding and an estimate of the CMCI at the next meeting.
So again, we have we have an approved proposal that includes bidding for $5,750 and CMI for $22,000. So that means just so we're all clear, because it wasn't, oftentimes when you do itemizations, you'll compare it to the phases that were done. You can show which buckets you're adding to if it would fall in that bucket. Like under phase 3, you might have done extra work to complete phase 3 because of questions or requests or whatever that you're getting, and you can kind of show where it compares. In this case, we haven't done bidding. It sounds like we haven't done bidding yet, which is phase 4, which is for $5,750, and we haven't done CMI, obviously, which is for $22,000. So
And
of
that
that,
CMCI number will be different. That was based on a project that was probably at the most 2/3 the size of the project we have now that's going out to bid. Right,
which,
so we're happy to put a cost estimate for bidding and CMCI if you'd like us to stop at the not-to-exceed number that's in the proposal from May. In the proposal, or in the signed proposal, as I mentioned, it has stated that the hours can be reallocated to make sure that deliverables are delivered, and that's exactly what we've done with the direction of the additional scope that's been tasked to us throughout the design phase. So we're happy to stop at the end of the design phase
Yeah.
and not to exceed the 177,975. And we can bring a cost if you need to wait for us to move forward with bidding, and also CMCI according to the project that's actually going out to bid now. The original project, as you recall, was smaller scope. It was aluminum. It was not associated with some other items that connected to nearby projects. And it didn't include the easement stakeouts and work with the property owner at One Highland Drive.
which has nothing to do with CMI, though.
No,
I
but
recognize the
that's
easement
why I
stuff.
point out
I definitely recognize the
That's why I
easement
pointed
stuff.
that out. Those time and effort that was originally like, well, if we didn't have to do
Yeah.
all that, likely it would be available at the end for the construction phase. That's been shifted forward because of these additional items that we didn't
Yeah.
want to delay on.
So what I'm getting at is, we already have a scope of work for bidding and CMI that we've approved based on the project.
The
So that
previous
means that,
project,
let me finish,
project from
please.
May.
Let me finish, please. So that totals $27,750. That's basically already been spent, plus a couple thousand, it sounds like.
Correct.
To do other stuff. We haven't, now you're saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, the CMI sounds like it's going to be significantly higher than the 22 that was previously bid. Just,
Well, it depends on the construction and the construction.
I know, but the way you're saying it, it leads me to believe that's going to be higher.
It's a
So if
more
I'm wrong,
expensive
tell me.
contract that would be likely to come in at this point.
So-
The expanded scope.
If the contract is more expensive because the materials are more expensive, or something, the labor's more expensive that we're getting from a contractor, that doesn't change the inspection requirements.
It's not more, I don't think it would be more expensive because of the material. It's more expensive because there's more things to build as part of the project than was originally thought of in May when it was put in the early budget and proposed for this calendar year. So there's retaining walls, there's the pavement and stormwater, there's the coordination with the utilities to move their lines when the culvert's replaced, and there's the connection with sidewalk that's associated with
So-
future projects.
So all those utilities and culvert installation have always been part of the project, though?
The
Correct.
utilities, the water and gas were moving their lines, correct.
Mhm.
The embankment work with the easements and the property owner at One Highland Drive was not the original project. That was additional work, not only during design phase, but also will be additional work significantly for the contractor to put in the block walls and retaining structures to limit the slope of the channel itself. The culvert will go in. The culvert is a more expensive culvert than it was originally thought of at the time of the proposal and the original.
Yeah, that's the culvert
budget.
price. You don't, your price for inspection doesn't go up because the culvert's more expensive. though.
Correct, but assembling a precast culvert is a little bit more involved in bolting together aluminum panels. So our inspection total, I would say, standard for the industry is maybe 5% of the contract value. I don't think it would be that much for a project that's, the scope of this one. It will be less, but it would be a proposed cost of, part-time inspection as similar with other township projects to make sure the work's done per the approved plans.
What was your engineer's estimate for the project to date?
To date, it's probably close to $950,000.
So, and you're thinking 5% of that for CMI now?
Industry standard is about 5%. I don't think it would be that much. 5% of that's a significant amount.
It's a
which-
double or more.
Yeah, that's not
why.
part-time inspection. That would be someone out there all the time at least,
Well,
which we
and-
don't need for
yeah.
this project.
So that's why when we hear CMI is being removed, and then we hear, we know those numbers, right? So when we hear that and you say we're going to do a percent of the overall project costs, and we're somewhat, we've had these conversations about project costs, so we're aware that the range, not exact, but the range, so we can do the quick math saying, okay, that sounds like a $40,000 or $50,000 hit now instead of the 22 that we got a few months back. So that's where we have, I don't know that the project is doubled in size and complexity from an inspection perspective, but that's where I think we have a concern that we need to be able to, our staff, needs to be able to manage our contracts. So when we have not to exceed value contracts, whether it's this one or some other project that has not to exceed, we need to be aware of what those costs are before if we know we're getting close, or we're getting close, or some other contractor knows they're getting close, then they should not be able to, and I think our contractors are written so that we don't just keep going, and reallocating funds without an estimate, and if we need to fix this in our process, then we should, but we should not be moving forward with executing projects or tasks without knowing what the cost is going to be, reviewing it, making sure we're clear on what it is, and then making sure that we have an agreement in place so that it protects everybody, not just us, protects you too.
It's
So you get
precisely
paid.
what this memo is.
But it's after the fact. That's the problem.
No, we're not exceeding the amount yet. We are approaching the end of the
Well,
design phase.
You've
and
already
bidding.
spent Phase 4 and 5 that were approved to the tune of $27,000. So yes, you've already gone past it.
I will want to clarify just that we didn't spend it. We did the additional items.
The value of
to
the contract
finish
has
the
been
design.
spent. You can't, don't smile at me. This
I'm
is
just chuckling a little bit
No.
because it's not like we're writing checks or spending money. We are doing the actions for the design phase that were directed, and we are preparing the deliverables per the expanded scope. I agree that the
Okay.
original estimated value of each phase in the original proposal from May for that scope of project estimated that value in each phase. It was an estimate. If
No,
we're
no,
full-
no,
if-
no.
hold on a
Proposals
second.
are not,
If I
let
can
let
just
me
finish
finish.
for a
No,
second.
no.
If we can
Excuse me, can I please?
Can I
He
can I
cut me
just
off and
finish
laughed
my
at me. I
proposal
don't want him to.
clarification? I was just going to say that not to exceed, if it was foolish on our part to
This is
put
the
that
first time
number
am I
in
using
May,
this,
that's one thing, but at this point, we wanted to provide an update on the township's direction
The
and
third
where the next
doc,
phases are.
I asked who's our Sergeant at Arms? No. The point, the reason why we're having this discussion, and I'll be direct about it, is the board collectively wants to analyze and make sure our processes around project management are clearly understood by all participants in the project process. And we have certain understandings of the way projects evolve and change over time. And I would say, as somebody who, I think I get to say I'm the longest serving member currently on the board, our ability to manage projects over time is improving, but probably not as fast as board members would like. And part of that is a more rigorous discussion around process, and that's what we're doing right now. And for us to have that discussion doesn't necessarily mean that we're making accusations or things like that. We're asking questions to resolve situations. At the end of the day, we're ultimately responsible, right? So for many of us, we remember July 15th like it were yesterday, and we want to make sure everything's done 100% right. But part of that is making sure that we honor all the taxpayers of Lower Makefield Township, and part of that means we have to ask these detailed questions, and sometimes it's uncomfortable to say, well, we have documentation here, we don't have documentation here. It's not, I don't think we're trying to litigate this now as much as we're asking, and this is just so far the two of us, but I'm assuming other board members are feeling the same way. We want to make sure that our processes are down. If you're saying, hey, I've documented this change or that change, and I can show that to you, that's fine. We're not trying to put you on the spot and say, hey, produce all the evidence now. What we're trying to say is, hey, we've got some legitimate questions on process here, and we want to resolve them. That's what we're getting at today. And I think structurally, I mean, we can continue the discussion, although maybe it would be best for us to let go of this discussion for now and for you to step back and kind of say, okay, here's where the project is, and maybe it's a function of the read of the memo for all of us wasn't as clear as it might have been for you. And remember, some of us are not engineers. For the record, I was supposed to be one, but I disgraced the family and went into business and politics. So as a consequence, we just want to resolve and get that. So if Isaac, if you want to take this as a to-do item, step back and say, okay, document some of this stuff, and maybe you sit one-on-one with a few of us and say, okay, this is what I meant here, or something like that, we can certainly work through that. And it's very possible you might be saying, I have this approval from this staff member at this time, right? Because we've had these issues in other projects in years past with other staff members. So I'm not, as much as I love, our staff in general, that doesn't mean at certain times in years past there were mistakes. We just want to lock all that down. Is that comfortable for you, Isaac, in terms of us following up?
I hear what you're saying, yes.
Yep.
And
All right.
I guess to clarify the memo, I can ask the board if they have questions on the specific additional work requested and completed items. These aren't items that were done kind of off the cuff
Yep.
or anything else. These were ones that were directed at board meetings.
Right.
Because I do reach out for
I received
responses
your
from
voicemail
the
today,
board
and so I'm
members
not- right.
days in advance of these
Yep.
meetings to discuss these kind of
Yep.
things. But we also work with staff to discuss these as well. And each of these items was things that were identified to do
Yep.
and that were completed and that were not in the original scope from May.
Yep.
And some of the supervisors have joined us at the meetings in the field where these were discussed,
Yep.
given direction to complete, and were completed. So if the issue is the phrasing not to exceed from the estimate that was given in May of 2024 as compared to where we are now in December, I know we've been working with staff to adjust that going forward, because it really isn't a not to exceed unless the project doesn't change at all. Right? If it's an estimate for that scope, and then with the direction for these additional items, the effort needs to be shifted to complete those for the design phase.
I think where some supervisors are having discomfort is the immediate shifting of things and oh wait, we're out of money kind of stuff within the project parameters and within the estimate. So I think for us to kind of come back and look at that and dig in a little further, and it may be a communications issue, Isaac, and we can certainly talk through that. Again, you weren't necessarily asking for a motion at all, but this
No,
is
because it wasn't a
informational.
proposed
Right,
change.
I understand.
Yes.
And so we read that, some of us read it and had concerns, and that's why you're getting this. I read it that way. I wasn't quite sure, and someone else read it and felt that way. That's why you're getting the questions. So we need to.
We'd greatly appreciate that feedback
Yeah.
in real time.
Yep, certainly. And with that, is there any other general project updates that are not included in the memo that we need to cover?
Absolutely. I guess for the Highland project, is there a direction? Would you like us to stop at the not-to-exceed number until further coordination is presented?
My assumption is further coordination would occur relatively quickly. So you have people in the field now, like out there now?
No, this is the design phase that we're in
Okay.
currently. So it would be completing the design with Contech, so it goes into January. The total for the design phase is included,
Yep.
as well as the additional work that has been done. And then it would be to, we can stop before the bidding phase, as I mentioned,
Yep.
which
Yep.
would limit it to the not-to-exceed value of the estimated phases from May. We're happy to provide what the bidding and the construction management estimate would be come January, when that phase is ready to
Yep.
move forward.
And I hate to put some people on the spot, naming our staff people, what's, with respect, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, we can, you know, take a little bit of time and have the conversations as you've suggested. I think that probably would be more productive.
Yeah.
Than trying to go through this at this point.
Yep.
So I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the cost of services in the proposal, this and the other projects that have had similar conversations, I think is quite clear on how time and effort's adjusted for deliverables as the design phase moves forward. There's nothing that's been done outside of that, this project included, and that's where we could come back and explain any kind of estimate for the work that would follow after the additional work is completed in earlier phases.
Sorry, really quick.
Sure.
I think we need to, moving forward, we need to direct staff to, whenever we're working with a contractor, if they give you a time and materials not to exceed amount, that is a contract term. When it says not to exceed, that means don't exceed unless you get prior authorization in writing with an estimate. That is contracting in PM 101. That is not a rough estimate. So I think we need to implement that as a policy and make sure that's clear. I don't know that I've never dealt with it any other way, but just make sure that's clear. And when it comes to a scope of work that we've agreed to, make sure there's a policy that unless we get prior approval to do so, there should be no reallotment of funds across tasks so that it's very clear how things are being managed, but to the dollar, because that's how we have to manage things these days. And everything is approved ahead of time, and line items are provided and clear direction is provided. That's why we are where we're at, in my opinion. So anyway.
Yeah, and that's why I talked
So
with
if I
staff
could
for,
just-
go ahead, Suzanne, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Supervisor Lundy, if you'd like to be recognized, sure.
Yeah, thank you. You know, as I'm following along the conversation, as we see the documents before us, when this comes back, it would be helpful, you know, to really break out, we agreed to X, and then X had to change, and then just to understand, you know, where we are, because I will agree, right, the attorney in me, lawyer, I know you like to hear that, so the lawyer in me, when I hear not to exceed, all of this is going to be done, and it's not going to exceed this. And if changes come along, I would interpret that as you can still do it within the not to exceed, and if not, then we would have revised that number. So wherever we are, we are. It would just be good that when we come back, we see a breakout of what we thought we were and where we actually are.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's why with the township, we've been looking at for projects that are budgeted for the next year. It's not helpful to have that language, to be honest, because it's not a contract relationship. It's a proposal to do work for a project that's budgeted in the township budget. So the not to exceed language more accurately, it's an estimated total design cost of the project that's already budgeted. So it does change throughout the project as design changes,
Right.
and there's
That is
types of changes are
100%
brought to the
incorrect.
So.
I don't believe so. No, that
So-
is correct.
But here's where, before I don't want to be using the gavel too much today, although, what the heck, I enjoy the gavel, but, or the sergeant at arms. But my thought here is, and for some folks who may be seeing this and are wondering, these guys are arguing over, we're talking about 20 grand or 50 grand. The reason why isn't the dollar amount, right? And it's a process question. And it's a process question because we've struggled collectively as a board before I joined the board and after, managing projects. We have some clear wins. There are tremendous success stories about the work that we've done post-July 15th with Maple Vale. We're not denying that. And we're happy to have who offered a pizza party? Was it PNC? Write that one down. I kid. We're happy to celebrate those and understand what worked, right? What did we learn there? We also need to go back and say what's not working. And that's what we're trying to do here now. And we're asking that between you, us, staff, and the larger community. And that's what we're shooting for today.
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
The not-to-exceed language for an estimate
Yep.
in May for a project that goes 12 months later that's gone through changes is not the right kind of setup. So that's, we've already identified ways to improve that going forward.
We need to work on that. And I think at this time, it'd be good to go to the manager's report. That's section 8A.
Thank you
Would
very
you-
much.
No updates then for the other projects?
Well, they're in the memo, right?
No,
If you've read the
Yeah.
engineer's report.
Yeah.
okay, you good? Okay, all right. So thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The first item under my section of the agenda is to consider Resolution 24-27, adopting an updated Lower Makefield Township right-to-know law policy. The substantive changes, as you note, as you look through, as you saw in the attachment to the resolution, which is the actual policy being proposed, largely relates to the emergence of AI-generated requests. Services such as FOIA Buddy, for example, is one that's out there, and some recent sort of guidance that's come from the Office of Open Records and also relevant state associations. So basically, the policy establishes that anonymous requests will not be granted, will not be responded to. They will be denied. And so Curtin and Hefner has worked on the policy again based on, or has updated the policy based on the guidance from the Office of Open Records and also, again, relevant government associations. We're happy to review any other aspect of the policy that may have, but that's the substantive change from the prior policy that the township had adopted relative to right-to-know law requests. We would recommend approval of the resolution.
So moved?
Second?
Before I call the question, if you're a real person living in anywhere in Pennsylvania, this does not abridge your rights to file a right-to-know request in any way, shape, or form.
That is correct.
You're just a real person, want to process it. However, if you're not a real person, and by person we mean like human, we have limits and rules about honoring those requests. So, and we need to know who's asking for it to make sure that you're real. So for any, because I know we have some, Lower Makefield has some famous folks in terms of their use of the right-to-know laws. This is not going to change any of your rights.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted to cover, because I didn't want the calls to come. And the right-to-know requests, right? Which, by the way, at any time, if you'd like all of my emails, text messages, what I had for lunch, go for it. But please don't, because it costs the township money when you make a right-to-know request.
Yeah.
With that, I'll call the Supervisor Roth. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect the motion passed 5-0.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The next item is to, as the board is aware, there has been a lot of work put into moving forward with implementation of the Patterson Farm Master Plan. The next authorization being sought is to authorize both myself and the township solicitor to begin working on a template management agreement between the township and a nonprofit entity relating to Patterson Farm. Again, one of the fundamental recommendations of the Patterson Farm Master Plan was the potential partnership with a nonprofit. Much of the details of that relationship would be established through a general management agreement. So this would not be a tenant. This would be more in terms of just implementation efforts and overall management of the property. So again, our recommendation would be to begin working on that template management agreement to determine terms that the Board of Supervisors and the township may be comfortable with relative to the potential involvement of a nonprofit entity. So I'm happy to address any questions that you may have regarding that.
You want to make a motion first?
Yeah.
I'll make that motion. So moved.
Second.
Do you need any direction from the, I'm on, okay. Do you need any direction from the board relative to specific items, or do you,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
think you have
I
enough
think
information to start?
I mean, obviously, we've discussed these just in terms of generalities in executive session, recognizing that, again, there's, your solicitor was advising on some of those items and relates to sort of legal items. I think we have a general sense on some of the areas that, the board was looking at relative to, tenant agreements, those kinds of things. So I think we can probably put something together. If there's other items beyond those that have been discussed, obviously, please communicate that to us, and we're happy to incorporate those.
Yeah, I would second what Dave just said. I think we have the outline of what should be included, but if you have specifications or more targeted ideas of what you would like included, please forward them to me. I would say that this will probably, given the fact that it's going to be us and the nonprofit, it's going to go through a series of drafts and iterations. So hopefully, we'll be able to incorporate everybody's wants, desires, et cetera, in it. But yes, if
Yeah,
anything specific, please forward them to me.
Sorry, our intent is just to sort of tee this up. I mean, obviously, again, the identification of a nonprofit remains outstanding. The terms that may be agreeable to a nonprofit would be negotiable in the event that there would be a nonprofit that would present. But this would just provide sort of a basic sort of starting point for those negotiations based on sort of the consensus position of the Board of Supervisors.
All right. And you probably say this better than I would, but if anyone would like to donate towards Patterson Farm, the township does have our own 501c3 that you could donate to and we could later put towards Patterson Farm.
That's the Lower Makefield Community Fund, and yes, you could definitely direct donation if you were so inclined. And Supervisor Gren, it's Christmas season. Why not think of Patterson Farm in your gift giving?
That is a wonderful idea.
All right. With that, I will say, just before I call the question, Township has experience in doing this in the past, and a very positive one with Farmland Preservation Corporation, which is a 501c3 created by the Township that manages a series of farm properties throughout the Township. And many times folks have no idea what Farmland Preservation does. They're dedicated folks that have worked on for years. And the issues we deal with, or they deal with on buffers and things like that, aren't necessarily the most things that get news coverage, but the work they do is very important. They help promote continued agriculture in Lower Makefield. So those kinds of models and things that we've worked with there, this predates is a proven track record for the township to build on in a way that's focused for the needs of Patterson Farm, which is what we want to continue on doing. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And let the record, was that 5? I think so. Okay, so let the record reflect that passed 5-0. General updates, 8C.
Yeah, just a couple items. One, just of note for the public, the board is aware of this. The 2025 budget is available for public inspection. It's been made available for public inspection since Wednesday of last week, I believe. The public inspection period runs through the board's December 18th meeting. In addition to physically being posted here at the Township Building, it is also available on the Township website. There were also some social media posts as well to create general awareness that the public inspection period is ongoing and will continue through the 18th, when the Board of Supervisors is expected to take action on the 2025 budget. Sort of related to the budget, I just wanted to make you aware. So one of the items that was discussed when we were looking at refinements and potential cost-saving measures for 2025 had to do with some technology sort of spend within the area of website and Park and Rec registration software. We had been working with Civic Plus, which is probably the leading provider in terms of governmental websites in the nation. Some of the sort of guidance that the Board of Supervisors had previously provided and sort of aspirations was trying to consolidate some of the disparate sort of systems that we have. Again, multiple logins for customers, those kinds of things. And so after those earlier conversations, we started to engage with Civic Plus. Civic Plus watched your Board of Supervisors meeting and the discussion relative to the budget. And they appreciated, the work that the township did to try to refine things. They did come back and presented us with an opportunity that provides not only cost savings, but also some flexibility in terms of project launch that I just felt inclined to share with you. Again, I'm not asking for any action at this point. But I'm interested in feedback. So they've come back, they've refined their proposal. They're providing 75% savings on previously outlined first year annual project costs. And then they've also come back and provided some flexibility in terms of payment terms that would be advantageous, so and limit sort of the spend in 2025. So again, not looking for any action this evening, but if that's sort of an aspiration of the township to move in that direction, there is an opportunity here that comes with both cost savings as well as implementation flexibility that I wanted to just make you aware of. Monica, I don't know if you have any. You were part of that as well. I don't know if you have anything to add. A lot of the efficiencies really with the solution that they were offering do relate to the Park and Recreation Department in providing some efficiencies from a process perspective utilizing technology. So again, not to relitigate this or go over it, but I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I mean, I still feel that it'd be difficult to launch in January, and that's something that they talked about in our meeting, is that we could do a soft launch and still, with the discount, carry our community pass and kind of work through the month's soft launch. But there's a lot of efficiency in the transition from some of the processes that we have right now. For instance, for pool registration, there's a lot of paperwork we have to accept. All of that right now comes through email. So each person who registers, all 6,500, we send an individual email to them that says, these are all the paperwork, this is all the stuff that you need, please respond. Then they respond, and we have to go back and forth with them. That would all go away with this system. So that would give our staff more opportunity to be able to help administratively in other areas, which would be really a great help to us. So I do think it'd be something that would be useful. Whether we'd be able to launch the pool this year, I'm not sure, but maybe summer camp and some of the other things. Summer camp is similar. There's about 9 documents a parent has to sign and send in. It's an individual email that we send out now. With the new system, it would be an uploaded system, so the resident then could upload their paperwork and document rather than send us send an email and vice versa. So that all goes away. So it's a big time savings for us. So, when we were really talking about it, it is something that it'd be great to move forward into. Launching it this year is kind of why I brought it up as something to cut. But with this, I think this is a great opportunity if the board should consider to move that direction.
Yeah, so the general, again, so the direction, and we heard sort of loud and clear from the Board of Supervisors was, obviously a desire to be in a position to make sure we're being as efficient as possible, that we're leveraging technology, we're leveraging the resources that we have, and so this tool is one that would enable us to do that and is consistent with sort of the strategic direction that the Board of Supervisors has outlined. So
I'm going to ask you a really simple question, because it all sounds great, right? We all talk about this all the time. How much is it? They're really selling it,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
With discounts, but first year, and do you have to sign up for 10 years? And 3 of your children, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you wouldn't
And we have
probably
two,
wouldn't
so
make
what am I gonna do?
sort of software transition. So on the civic rec side, the part that Monica's talking about, initial total investment in the term is $15,669.37, which is a little bit more than what we're paying for Community Pass, with a lot more functionality. And then moving forward, I mean,
Does Community Pass go away? Sorry to
Community
interrupt.
Pass would go
Yeah,
away,
would go
yes.
So is
Yeah,
it-
Yes.
Is it
So we'd have 1 year where we have both, and
And then-
then the second year, Community Pass would go away.
Does anything
And-
else
and
go away?
just- What?
does it integrate with anything else that could allow any of our, because we have some disjointed technology
Yeah, there's
sometimes, right?
possible other technology. And then another thing to talk about is transitioning to like online interactions versus some of these email interactions. There's a potential cost savings, and I can share this document with you, of about $73,000 based on our transactions input with ICMA data about like walk-in transaction. The cost of a walk-in transaction is about $9. The cost of a web chat is about $7.25. So, and then if you're a web self-service online transaction, it's 15 cents per transaction. So you could see how transitioning into a software like this, where we could take care of some of that stuff, that it would pay for itself over time. And I'd be glad to share this with you.
No, it all makes sense. It's just timing and what's the long-term cost of ownership versus payback period versus what we have what we have to spend, right? Because it all sounds great. It's just, could we do it in a timely manner within the budget? It's not a huge chunk up front, but what does it look like the following years compared to other stuff?
Yeah, so it's, the second year on the Park and Rec side is about, sorry. Well, the first year is more expensive because of the implementation costs. So not only, I mean, there's onboarding, there's all that, there's all that
It's
stuff.
basically
as
a
well.
mobilization, if you want to think about it that way.
So, Monica, do you have it? Sorry.
I can have it.
Can we negotiate that deal starting January 2025?
Well, that's when it would be. So
I'm sorry, January 2026.
Potentially, I mean, and yeah, so 32,000 is the ongoing annual cost on the recreation side. The website's about 7,000, so about 40,000 in total.
And then at some point, Community Pass goes away, so that
What's Community Pass per
Right,
year?
so Community Pass is about
10, 11,000.
11,000.
A year.
So
And
But
this-
it
we're
does
just talking
a
about
lot.
Parks and Rec, right?
It's not the
plan
full-
ultimately is to put it across the township, which
Right.
means there'd be additional
additional
fees
costs.
for.
Yeah.
Well,
I hear
these
you.
are the two solutions are both Park and Rec and then website. So again, I know this is disjointed because I wasn't intending to get too deep in this evening. The
EMAC looked at
website is a little bit shy of 25 in terms of the initial term, and then that drops down to $7,500 ongoing. And then Park and Rec's a little bit different, where a little bit shy of 16,000, I'm using round numbers, and then a 32,000 ongoing. So, and then their sort of initial term invoicing, they were looking at invoicing 25% in January of 2025, and then the remaining 75% in September of 2025 to provide some additional flexibility from a payment perspective. And then moving forward, they've indicated that they would work with us if we wanted to, for example, have billing done in April of each year, where we're getting tax receipts, those kinds of things. They would work with us on that side of things. So again, not suggesting that there wouldn't be an opportunity to do this moving forward, but if we're moving in that direction, there's a significant cost savings opportunity and also payment flexibility perspective, and perhaps more importantly, as Monica's saying on the Park and Rec side, also the ability to sort of soft launch without incurring costs, so that we're prepared to actually launch it as opposed to having to rush a launch. Does that that fair to say?
Yes, that's fair to say. I mean, even if we're talking about this again in September of next year, budget doesn't pass until December, and I still would have the same
Hesitation,
issue. Yeah, so, that's all I have.
Obviously, this is something that would be added or removed from the budget on the 18th. But in general, I haven't dug into the Civic Plus, so I don't really know the details of the software or any of that stuff. So that you guys have done that work.
Yeah, we have, as well as EMAC. Again, this is a recommendation of the Electronic Media Advisory Committee as well, who went through meeting with Civic Plus, talking about functionality and so forth. And again, heard sort of the direction of the Board of Supervisors to try to start integrating solutions. So,
I think, like, as you just said, this is probably something we talk about on the 18th, but coming into that meeting, given where we are with the budget, if there's, take a look at everything else because this does sound like, I obviously have seen it with EMAC, and it sounds pretty good. But I would first look to see if there's something else on your list that this could replace this year.
Yep.
That way we can stay kind of where we're at.
like
That would be ideal.
Yeah, net no change, yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
But I would want to say, though, that Monica, or even the seller who watched the whole meeting, and props to them, you reduce implementation risk significantly by not doing the pool, right? So this gives you that time to get that implementation down. So from that perspective, I think in the timing, those elements would work well, so.
Yeah, I mean, they and again, not to oversell, but they definitely want to be a partner of the township, and so they've, in our minds, have demonstrated that by providing us flexibility that they typically would not provide, so.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other
No,
updates?
no further, Mr. Chair.
We'll move on to agenda item 9, Solicitor's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The minutes shall reflect that the supervisors present this evening did meet in executive session immediately prior to this Board of Supervisors meeting to discuss a litigation matter, a real estate issue, and employment matters. Moving to agenda item 9A, briefing on historic structures demolition ordinance. In your packet, you have a draft of the historic structures demolition ordinance prepared by us, which has been reviewed by staff as well as the Historic Commission representatives, I believe of which 2 were present this evening. So we can go through this, or they can come up to the table if they'd like to discuss this or answer any questions you may have. The purpose of this ordinance is to promote preservation of historic structures within the township, and in the case where preservation is not possible or practicable, providing provisions for the demolition, removal, or relocation of the structures. So it goes into detail as to how to accomplish all of the above. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to review. I know that this is going back to the Planning Commission on Monday evening, if I'm not mistaken, for their review. This has been or will be sent to Bucks County Planning Commission also for their input. Dan and I spoke about this. McLuhan, he was going to send it. I don't know if he did send it yet, but it's in process. It either is in the Bucks County Planning Commission right now for review or will be shortly.
Mr. Chair, would you like, Joe Camerata, would you
Yes.
like them
Would you like-
to come up?
Yes.
I was going to say,
they've
like,
worked-
can I just yell a question to Joe? But come on up.
Can come up to the table.
All committee members should come up. You shouldn't leave poor Joe by himself. Thank you.
Sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to call Joe out.
We were just, for the record, we were just looking for it on our SharePoint, and I think it's been emailed to us, which is why.
Oh, I apologize. I
Yeah,
thought
no worries.
David in the packet.
With that, always a pleasure to have you guys join us. The Historical Commission has done just amazing work over the last couple of years, so we really appreciate your work and your efforts. Now might be a good time to take if you're putting the pitch together and why we need this and what it does, since you're closest to it.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Maybe just to make it brief, what we have seen over the past couple years is kind of an alarming rate of demolition of some of the most historic properties that we have here in Lower Makefield Township. In fact, if we look back at properties from the 18th century, so which were the original buildings, the original structures that were here, there's only 31 remaining. If we move that up another century, I think there's another maybe 70 to 80. So this is happening largely because, as you know, a lot of the farms are being sold to developers, and when those farms get sold, the structures go away with that. I mean, Pricker Preserve is kind of rare in terms of what it was able to do in terms of maintaining the historic house and barn there. It's also, though, just other developers. I mean, there's a house on Oxford Valley Road that was from the 18th century, completely redone. The person bought it. They decided that they didn't like the house. They wanted to have a different house with a master bedroom and suite for their son-in-law, and they tore the house down. You know, so 300 years of history just a race for a master bedroom and bathroom suite. So what we're proposing is a demolition ordinance for the historic houses that would first and foremost ask the owner of those houses to consider not destroying them by either selling it, reusing it for another purpose, or relocating it to a different area, okay, if possible. If none of those become feasible for one reason or another, including economic reasons, that the ordinance then asks that or actually should say requires that the owner document the house so that we don't lose all the important information such as, you know, the size of the house, materials that were used, et cetera, et cetera. And this might seem like a small detail, but for other property owners that live in Lower Makefield that want to restore their houses or put their houses on the National Register, we need that documentation in order to show, you know, comparables for that purpose. So that's why the documentation is important. So I'll leave it there. I would just say that the ordinance was reviewed by both the Historical Commission, PA SHPO, and the HARB. They all have provided input back to that.
Do board members have any questions?
Ask one.
Sure.
Hey, Joe. When we're talking, one of the concerns I think we've had in the past is, you know, when we look at Section 106 requirements, National Historic Preservation Act, you know, anything over 50 years old, not necessarily eligible, but is potentially eligible, and you have to go through the process through A, B, C, and D. Can you speak a little bit to which types or which homes these would apply to? Because I know I live in a house that's over 50 years old. It's by no means historic. It's been renovated multiple times. It's not historic just because I live there. So I know folks in my neighborhood probably wouldn't think that we'd want to go through something like this. Maybe some do, but it doesn't seem like this type of thing would apply. Then we also have much older homes that they look historic, I mean, to the everyday eye, you know. So could you touch upon that a little bit, just so people understand what this applies to?
So first of all, we chose a date or a year of 1939 because that's when building permits started in Lower Makefield. So anything built older than 1939, we have no record of those. So that was one criteria. Now, just so this doesn't age out, the other criteria was that the house had to be older than 100 years old. So, you know, we recognized the whole 50-year. So that was kind of the basis for properties to be considered, but not every one of those properties are going to necessarily be historic, like you pointed out. So from that, what we have put into the ordinance, and it's in an appendix, is a process for actually a house to be nominated to be considered as historic, and then a process for the Historical Commission to go through that would actually make a case for the historical significance of that property. This isn't going to be a National Register submission or anything that complicated. It's probably not going to be much more than a paragraph or two. But it would, you know, we would actually use the criteria that the Secretary for Interior has established for the National Register, just for criteria. We'd use them and apply it to a residence, make a case for its significance, and then the process continues that the property owner would be first of all, come to the Board of Supervisors for approval. If it was approved by the board, then the property owner would be notified of that, and then they would have a certain period for them to come in and say, yeah, you might think it's historic, but for this reason or another reason it's not. And then they can actually contest that.
And are we basing it off of the 4 criteria that, we're going along with the federal law?
Yeah,
effectively?
we're in line with the federal law as to
Okay.
when we make the case for historical significance, it'll be based on the 4 criteria.
Okay.
Other supervisor questions?
I don't have a question. I just, do want to point out all the work that they have put into this, not only with coming up with the idea, but to watch them, none of them who are attorneys, and certainly some of the issues that they've had to grapple with have had, issues in terms of property interests, whatnot. Really just digging into it and talking about it and seeking input from anybody who will give it to them. It's one of the things that I just love to see when our community comes together to leverage their best selves to help us all, be a better Lower Makefield Township.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, again, not that you're asking me, but the pragmatism that they've also sort of exercised in going through this effort, I think, is also, and I think that's some of the nuance that Supervisor Blundy is communicating at this point, is that there has been an attempt to sort of balance interests, and they've done from my perspective, they've done a good job in that. So thank you guys so much.
So I think at this time it would be appropriate for us to, is it time for a motion to publish this order?
No.
Or we still have to go to
Still-
planning?
yeah.
So that'll be occurring this Monday.
Correct.
So if you're watching at home and you have questions, and you might be in one of those very special homes, and you're not here today, or you hear about this tomorrow, Planning Commission will be meeting on this on Monday, and urge all of you to come out. This is already is it available for public inspection if they've got questions?
I don't know that it's been formally made available for public inspection at this point, but again, we're happy to post it online as well. It can be, yeah.
Yeah,
so-
we want people to understand just not only the work that's gone on, which is great, but also if they've got any questions or concerns, to make sure it's smooth sailing from there.
I'm just happy it's not just about the cemetery. Sorry, Monica.
Do you have other updates?
Just generally, but I would like to just echo what everybody had said. It was a pleasure working with Joe and the group. They were just thoughtful consideration as to ideas, how things should be worded, reworded, et cetera. And I think we worked well together and we got it done relatively quickly. So it was, I think it's a good ordinance that's before you. The only other general updates, I believe I reported last meeting, the responsible contractors ordinance. It should be before you next meeting, which is December 18th. And then other than that, just have a couple of easement agreements that we're working on. We'll work with the township engineer and his staff to complete those. So other than that, it concludes my report.
So I'll move on to supervisor reports. I guess I get to go first because it shows that. I mentioned the Planning Commission on Monday. So not only will we be discussing the historic structures demolition ordinance, which I urge you, if you're interested and want to learn more, or if you've got questions, to attend. There is one development item on there as well for folks that are interested. I know we've had a lot of inquiries from people who live in the Regency area about, so I want to urge all of them, if they've got concerns, to appear. That's really what I have for supervisor reports. Supervisor Grenier?
Yeah, only a couple of quick announcements. Zoning Hearing Board met last night. They have one continuance that'll move to the January 7th meeting, I believe it is, and they have canceled their next meeting this month, which I believe is December 17th, but I could be wrong on the date, that's all.
Supervisor Ross?
I only have one item. The Disability Advisory Board will have another vacancy opening soon, so if anybody's interested in applying, just go to the website and apply.
Are we going to be close to not having a quorum yet?
We're getting there.
Okay. Supervisor Blendy?
The other big thing that the Historical Commission is working on is, and we have to come up with a easier name, but 2026 will be the country's 250th anniversary. And they have started planning for community activities that will take place not only within Lower Makefield, but hopefully start at the school level. So a series of educational projects to showcase what was going on in Lower Makefield in 1776. So they're one of the committees that is fully staffed, but they have a lot of people who come regularly who are just volunteers and who help out on the different projects. So if you can't commit fully to be part of the historical group, maybe you could lend a hand if you have an educational background or whatnot to help our township celebrate the country's 250th anniversary. Bicentennial plus 50. I don't know. I'm working on it.
Supervisor McCartney?
I have nothing to report at this time.
Is there any other business from board members? I'm not seeing any. Moving on to agenda item 12, appointments to boards or commissions.
Sure, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Cheryl Coffey to the EAC.
Okay.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I have one also.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Kirsten Zolfo to the Disability Advisory
Second?
Committee.
Awesome. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any other appointments or reappointments? Okay. This is, we're on to agenda item 13, additional public comment on non-agenda items as needed. So if you missed your opportunity in the beginning of the meeting because the line was too long, or it hit you somewhere in the middle of the meeting, you're like, I need to talk about X, this is your chance to come to the dais or call us and share a public comment or question. If we got on the, do we have any callers on the line? No callers. And no one with that, we'll adjourn the meeting and thank you. Have a nice evening.